All right, hey everybody, welcome to this special live stream, and we're going to be talking about the APEC summit between Biden and Xi Jinping and what they talked about. Now, so far we're waiting for Biden's press conference, but the Chinese side has released their version of the summit declaration, and they're much faster than the United States recently, and so we could be waiting for a few hours before we get that, but we'll have the we'll go through the Chinese side because I think that's where we need to understand why they're using the language they're using. But this is what Biden has said on a tweet. So he says, "I've just concluded in a day of meetings with President Xi and believe that they were some of the most constructive and productive discussions we've had were built on groundwork laid over the past several months of diplomacy between our countries and made important progress." Exactly what they were, we haven't seen the concrete stuff yet, but this already tells us that the original meeting length was supposed to be 4 hours long. It started at about 2 p.m. Pacific time, and then it ended about half an hour ago. And so a little less than the 4 hours, but that's what the Chinese side requested. And so there's that. But the most important one is this. So according to a U.S. senior official, Xi Jinping here, so this is the tweet, says that no such plans for China military action against Taiwan in coming years, okay? Now here's the catch, okay? Here's the catch. So this is from Reuters. It says, Biden and Xi had a substantial exchange about Taiwan. Xi told Biden China's preference was for peaceful reunification with Taiwan, but then moved to talk about conditions in which force could be used, okay? So that's the catch. So basically they're saying that we won't use force against Taiwan in the coming years under the condition that they peacefully reunify with China. How are they going to achieve that? Well, right now, Taiwan is in the steps for the presidential election, which is January. So in a few months, right? 3 months, less than 3 months. If they elect a president who is pro-China and they march toward the steps of voting for reunification, obviously China is not going to need a military action to take Taiwan. But if the current government, which is the Democratic Progressive Party, DRP, they maintain power, then the potential for a Taiwan invasion with military force is still on the table, and by 2027. So this is a blatant lie by Xi Jinping, what he just promised, okay? I don't know why U.S. officials thought this was even newsworthy to tell a reporter to leak this to Reuters. That's where it came from. But that's such a lie. They basically said something they know were a lie, expanded it, but framed it in a way to say that, oh yeah, we're not seeking any military cooperation, military confrontation over Taiwan, so you should stop arming Taiwan because we're not going to do anything unless they don't peacefully reunify, which in my view is going to be very hard. So we'll see for the next year's election. So that's that, right? Okay, so that's lie number one. And then we also have this. So this was them leaving. I just saw this video here. Them shaking hands and leaving, going about on their way. So Xi Jinping is on his way right now to attend a dinner. You might have heard this. For $40,000, for the pocket change price of $40,000, you can spend your night with Xi Jinping to wine and dine your way to try to make new deals with China. And I know Elon Musk is going, Microsoft CEO is also going, Citigroup, there's Apple's Tim Cook is not going. They're sending a government sort of attaché person instead. So Tim Cook, obviously, Apple got a big smack in the head in China recently, so he's not going. Props for him to do that. But take a look at this video here. Not this one. Not this one either. This one. So this was making, honestly, I was really shocked because I can't believe that this is happening in the United States. Okay, so take a look at this. Hold on a second. Okay, let me play it here. So this is not Beijing, this is the streets of San Francisco. And we have these Chinese Communist Party flags waving, and you have cops escorting Xi Jinping's motorcade. And I think this video, you've probably seen it if you were on Twitter or otherwise today. It's actually really stunning to see how San Francisco has been turned into a propaganda device to tout the victory of Xi Jinping, and to welcome him like that, to me is very, very, very scary for the reception that Xi Jinping is going to receive. So with that being said, let's go dive into the actual Chinese readout. Okay, so let me find it here. All right. And feel free to leave me your questions, and I'll be reading them periodically to answer them. Let me see if I have any right now. Okay, perfect. All right, so let's go through that. All right. Okay, so the beginning part, they just say that they met, blah, 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 candid exchange, strategic overall. Okay, so here's the first important point here. So says, Xi Jinping pointed out that the world today is undergoing major changes unseen in a century. China and the United States have two options. One is to strengthen unity and cooperation, work together to address global challenges, promote world security and prosperity. The other is to adopt a zero-sum mentality, provoke conflict between camps, and lead the world to turmoil and division. Basically, Xi Jinping is saying that for me and you, so US and China, to work together, we either have to play confrontation or cooperation. And he's obviously hinting at we have to do cooperation. And the reason why this is being said is that so every time the CCP puts out these statements or whatever they say, right, it always has to seem like Xi Jinping is the one that's making or offering the US the choice to do this, right? The highway or the, I guess, the terrible way. So for them, they're saying that the China-US relations is built on the idea that we should not be playing zero-sum games. So it's not like you die or I die. It's we can work together, win-win cooperation. Now, this is something that the CCP always says in these high-level engagements, which is saying that we're offering you a choice to work with us. And if you agree to our terms, then that's a win-win scenario. If you don't agree with our terms, then you're the one who has decided not to keep this peacefully. Okay, so pushing the entire responsibility of the relationship onto the other side, in this case, the United States. And so in the bottom, he says here, no one can bear I hate this Google translation thing. No one can bear the consequences of conflict and confrontation. Great power competition cannot solve the problems facing China, the United States, and the world. This earth can accommodate China and the United States. Okay, this earth. So back in 2012, I believe, Xi Jinping, when he met then Vice President Biden, he had said something along the lines of how China and the US can exist peacefully across the Pacific Ocean. So basically the idea is that you can have two great powers, right? Existing, the ocean is large enough for both China and the United States to peacefully exist. Now Xi Jinping has changed the word from Pacific to Earth. So you can see the increase or the dramaticness of the ambition, right, of Xi Jinping, which is now he wants to conquer, I wouldn't say the full Earth, but at least half of the Earth. He's hinting at the idea that China is powerful enough to be on equal footing with the United States, not inferior to the United States. This has always been sort of the advantage of the CCP, which is that they've long seek to create this facade that China is a step below the US, right? The US is the big guy, China is simply trying to be a follower. This is how the portrayal of China's image was for the last 40 years, which was that China was a follower, but it is a growing follower. It has a huge potential, but it will never seek to topple the US. But now under Xi Jinping, that has dramatically changed. Even though they don't say this on paper, that's the idea there. Okay, so moving on to the second portion here. Let's see. Oh, sorry, the music, let me turn it off. My bad. Let me turn that off. Okay, it should be gone now. Okay, all right. Next part. This part is also important because essentially what Xi Jinping is saying here is that following last year's meeting in Bali, Xi Jinping highlighted the idea that you cannot change how China is under the CCP because they're trying to confuse the idea that China is the CCP and the CCP represents China. So Xi Jinping says that he wants to expand on the so-called Chinese-style modernization and so-called developing through this socialism with Chinese characteristics, right? That's his official kind of tone for everything in China. Now, obviously, we know how badly that has turned out. China's economy is terrible. It's declined, exports declined, imports declined. People have no money, no real estate growth. The yuan has dropped to a historic low. So everything has fallen apart under this so-called Xi Jinping style of China. And so obviously it's a failed concept, but they're highlighting it here again, not because they think that the US will agree with it, but they're saying that this is our sort of perception or our idea of China, and you cannot violate it. So that's, to me, that sounds like a threat. Because last year at Bali, Biden had promised Xi Jinping that he's not going to seek regime change in China, so he doesn't really want the CCP to fall. And this is, I think, fundamentally a troubled view from the Biden administration, which is that they believe somehow if the CCP were to fall, right, China, without the CCP, that it's going to blow up. It's going to go into this like full-blown anarchy, which is, again, a CCP view, which is that without them, there's no China. So the Biden administration is really afraid to confront China in the sense that if we do the kill shot, they're going to die and then nothing happens after. Like the entire country somehow is going to implode, which we know that that's not how it happens, right? China's had multiple dynasties. One comes after another. So in its history, it's already had a huge history of rejuvenation following each sort of era's closure and the beginning of a new era. So this is just a fear that's created. And I think it's really ridiculous. Okay, so then next point is the music off? I think the music is off. Let me see here. Let me know if the music is off. I'm pretty sure I turned it off. Let me ask, is the music off? Okay, perfect. All right, okay, let's continue that. So next point is, this is pretty useless, so I'm just gonna skip it. I basically talked about this, right? What they're saying here is the so-called both sides adhere to mutual respect, peaceful coexistence, and win-win cooperation. And so we already talked about this part. Okay, so now here is what the CCP demands the US would do in so-called this 5 pillars of Sino-US relations, okay? So the 5 pillars, the first one is to jointly establish a correct understanding. China has always been committed to building a stable, healthy, and sustainable Sino-US relationship. At the same time, China has interests that must be safeguarded, principles that must be defended, and bottom lines that must be adhered to. We hope that the two countries can be partners, respect each other, and coexist peacefully. Now, in my other video, I talked about this, which is that fundamentally the US and China side have differences that simply cannot be solved. In my view, this is one of those things that's empty in terms of the substance, because I think at this inflection point, China and the United States are on way too different of a path, right? China's ideologically, politically, are doing something much different than what the US side is doing. And so for them to, I think it's impossible for them to cooperate again. I think the Biden administration, whether to their credit or not, has recognized on their own that certain levels of China's aggression, whether that's the economy, military, political, with Russia, with Ukraine, with Israel, and with Iran, they, I think, have a certain level of understanding that it's not going to work out, right? There's no complete cooperation. So you can't talk about somehow understanding that China and the United States are going to be in a healthy relationship. I think this is it's empty, basically. Now, the second here is jointly and effectively manage differences. Just as I was talking about, we must not let differences become a chasm between the two countries, but must find ways to build bridges that meet each other halfway. Both sides should understand each other's bottom line of principles, not toss around, stir up trouble, or cross boundaries. communicate more, have more dialogues, and discuss more and handle differences and accidents calmly. So this second point is essentially summarized as the US needs to communicate more and China doesn't have to do much. Okay. Now, if you remember back in August of last year, when they canceled those high-level military communications channels and called off these military devices with the US, they were the one who shut off from the United States. So for them to come out now and say that we need more dialogues, we need more cross-bridge communications, whatever the term is simply refusing to recognize they were the ones who broke that communication off in the first place. So they're just lying to us by saying that they want more communications when in fact they only wanted it now because it benefits them. And that's pretty much it. So again, it's one of those points where if you know the line, you will understand that this is one of those things that China's, again, making an empty promise to. All right, question from Reese Delaney. Do you believe that China is really interested in having good relations with the United States? That's a perfect question. I just kind of briefly talked about it. So to answer your question, the fundamental difference between the US and China is this. They see us as they are the aggressor. They view us as an enemy, adversary. The US, under this administration currently, views China as a competitive partner. So think of it like this, right? The US sees this as a game of a sprint, right? 100-meter sprint. One side gets to the finish line first, they win, okay? Everybody listens to the starting pistol. When it sounds off, you run. And whoever gets the fastest to the finish line, you're the winner, right? But China doesn't view it like that. China sees this as a boxing match. And it's one where it's underground. So you can use all sorts of tactics to try to win over the opponent, whether it's stabbing them with a dagger, throwing sand in their eyes, or, I don't know, stinky garlic breath, whatever it is, right? They can use all methods and tools. That's why they have a doctrine called the Unrestricted Warfare Doctrine, written by two PLA generals, to talk about the idea to use every tool available to them to surpass the other person. So fundamentally, the two views this relationship differently. And so in my view, I just talked about it. Even if Biden and his team doesn't think that they want to end the CCP as it is, I think they've still reached a certain level of understanding that China is fundamentally viewing themselves differently than what the United States views otherwise. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the fundamental difference why they're not going to be friends. Okay, let's continue. All right, so the third is jointly promote mutual beneficial cooperation. China and the United States share extensive common interest in many fields, including traditional fields such as economy, trade, agriculture, as well as emerging fields like climate change, artificial intelligence. Both sides should make use of the mechanisms restored or established in the fields of diplomacy, blah, 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 blah. Okay, so the news a few days ago already said that they're signing sort of a cooperation in the field of AI, as well as the usual stuff like climate change, fentanyl, and those issues, right? They're important issues, obviously. Fentanyl killing Americans daily, climate change, another big one where the world is so focused on it. But now with the AI as well, right? That's a huge point of debate over what is the conservative use of AI. What will it be weaponized, militarized, and so on? So these are great topics on their own, and it's issues that we should make huge importance on. But it's ones where China has used to leverage or extract concessions from the United States. So in exchange for China to cooperate on these aspects, what's the United States going to offer China in return, right? We're understanding that it could be lowering the economic pressure. It could be trying to export more to China. It could be basically reduce pressure on China in exchange for them to cooperate in these fields, which at the end of the day, I just haven't seen any evidence suggesting that China has done something concrete over issues like climate change. They've been screaming since 2006 about trying to do better for the climate, but we haven't seen them do anything right now. They're still the #1 polluter in the world. With fentanyl, since last year, they've tried to come to an agreement saying that we're going to work on fentanyl, crack down on the precursor and those that in China are making them, and yet we haven't seen much talked about this in who did they arrest? Nobody. So these are empty promises once again. Fourth, okay, so this is that responsibility as major powers solving the troubles facing human society cannot be achieved without cooperation among major countries. And so cooperation is a word you're hearing a lot. Xi Jinping is opening his arms up to Biden to say that we're going to work together. We have to achieve things because we can work together. Remember, I just talked about this idea that China is seeing themselves as an equal to the US now in both comprehensive national power, which is everything combined, right? Economy, people, military, and all that to the United States. And so they're saying that for us to work together, you have to listen to me and I have to respect you. And we have to set the boundaries in which we're both the same, on the same level. I'm not any less than you. And so this is a little bit of shift of the tones in which I think it's actually kind of interesting because Xi Jinping comes to this meeting with tremendous domestic pressure. And he's just recently, with the death of Premier Li Keqiang, right? He's facing a lot of pressure within the party too. People are guessing who killed Li Keqiang. And so Xi Jinping is the prime suspect for that, right? No matter he did it or not. And then the economy, as well as the general social sentiment towards Xi Jinping. All these things are adding so much pressure to him. For him to come out and say this, saying that we're somehow the equal, that's, in my view, is a lie to himself. There's no other way to put it. Right now, China is in no position economically to go up against the United States. But I think in this respect, he's also trying to play sort of, he's gambling on the idea that maybe Biden will fall for it and say, we respect you and we're going to come work with you. We'll see. This is the point where I think we have to watch for further. Okay, and then lastly, the fifth point, which is promote people-to-people and cultural exchange. So this point is about things like tourism, flights, all of that. So it's pretty minimal in the grand scheme of things. All right, let's see if we have any other questions. All right, question from Pepe Guns. Is investment in China a positive for China or investors? Do you think there are moral issues with aggressive Chinese diplomacy? Funds seems to be taking a turn but are unable to break relations. Again, that's another great question. So let me talk about this, right? Right now, Xi Jinping is having a dinner with business executives like Elon Musk. And the point here is that I talked about this in my interview with Newsmax today too. There's a huge separation of understanding between the elite class, right? Whether you want to call them the Wall Street executives or Bay Area or Silicon Valley tech elites. The truth is, and I think this is a reality without worrying too much about the domestic politics, which is that people, they're attracted to people with power because they think that, going to China, you can get something that you cannot get in the United States, right? Back in the days, it was you can get cheap labor, you can get manufacturing, you can get really low price exports of things that otherwise would take triple or quadruple the amount of money to make domestically. But today, something else still sticks around, which is the idea that if we can somehow use China to make us even richer, then we should continue to maintain the idea that China is stable. I don't know if that makes sense. Like, for example, right, if China were to fall and a democratic government or some sort of a government were to rise from that, right, maybe their approach to, heck, China could come out with somebody like a Trump, right, who maybe sees protectionism or sees domestic values much more than international trade. So what happens to these business elites who can no longer make money through China? They just lost a huge portion of the profit. Like for Tesla, if somehow their Shanghai factory can no longer exist, I'm just giving you a hypothetical scenario, but if that is the case, right now, the CCP leadership has created this attractive factor for the business people, not the regular Americans, not the regular Europeans, and so on, but the very top elite executives is the fact that they say no matter how our government behaves, how our people are, we can still provide you something that you cannot get in the United States. And this is only possible under an authoritarian or totalitarian leader. And so the long answer short is business deals have always been the way they are, which is a pure monetary transaction. But what the CCP has done is to sort of combine it with things like human rights, with things like political values, ideology into one. So it's like if you do business with them, to get the monetary transaction, you also have to agree with everything else that's packaged into it. And that's the scary part. And something that the elites don't seem to care that much. I mean, they're going to dinner, spending $40,000. That's somebody's yearly salary to just have a dinner with Xi Jinping. So hypocrisy or conscience, lack of conscience, whatever you want to call it, but that's it. All right, next one, let me see here. So yeah, okay, so the important part here is the Taiwan issue, all right? So remember we talked about in the beginning, if you haven't seen the tweet, I'll show it to you here. So again, it says that U.S. senior official says Xi Jinping said no such plans for China military action against Taiwan in coming years. The caveat here is that Biden and Xi had a substantial exchange about Taiwan. Xi told Biden's China preference was for peace reunification with Taiwan, but then moved to talk about conditions in which force could be also used. All right, so the important part here is the condition is next year's presidential election. If somebody, right now, they call it the Blue and White Alliance, which is the blue is the KMT, the Nationalist Party, allying together with the People's Party, which they're going to now, if they win, have a bigger majority than the DRP, or I keep forgetting, it's the DPP, Democratic Progressive Party, which is Tsai Ing-wen's party. So if the Green Party, which is the Tsai Ing-wen's party, doesn't win next year, then there's a huge chance that China can use the United Front influence and create a situation where within a few years they peacefully reunify through voting and through and that's scary, because by then China doesn't need to fire a shot. But if the DPP, which is the Green Party, gets voted in again next year, then there's a huge chance that China's going to launch an invasion. And so next January is a really important watershed moment for Taiwan. Okay, so Xi Jinping is talking about here, saying that the United States should embody its stance of not supporting Taiwan independence in concrete action, stop arming Taiwan, and support China's peaceful reunification. China will eventually be reunified and will inevitably be reunified. Okay, so here's the catch, right? Xi Jinping didn't tell Biden that we're not going to use military force, we're just not going to use it in a few years. China will eventually reunify means that no matter what method, how long it takes, we're going to do it. So this is the truth, right? Taiwan's question is always going to be on the table, no matter which administration. But it's something that Xi Jinping is not telling everyone else, which is that he needs to finish the Taiwan question by 2027. Because if he doesn't, in the party, he's going to lose credibility because Taiwan is something that even Chairman Mao couldn't do. So if he's able to do it, that just places him a higher step than Mao, right? Because if Mao couldn't even take Taiwan and Xi did it before his fourth term, which is 2027, then that solidifies his paramount power, something much bigger, higher than Mao. So he'd be the ultimate deity of the Communist Party in China. So he has to do it. But he's not telling Biden now because he needs Biden's support so China's economy can recover, so he can actually launch the invasion with the money, right? Which is then helped by business executives sending money to China. Okay, so this is the part. Okay, so that was Taiwan. Now the next part talks about the United States putting economic pressure on exports, investments, etc., and sanctions. And I think this is one of those points I'd expect some other agreements to come out of it, because China comes to the discussion table today seeking to get economic pressure relief. So this is one of those points. They're probably going to get something out of the United States. And in return, Biden is going to get what he asked for, which is the military-to-military communications channel. Aziel Leas, thank you so much for the $5. Hey, David, watch all your videos and shorts. You're an amazing reporter. You deserve success. What's your number one concern regarding China currently? Okay, Aziel, thank you so much for the question. My number one concern right now is actually how, I don't know if you guys heard about this, but China's, there's a performing arts group called Shenyuan. It's based in New York, and if you ever been to the performance, it's a classical Chinese dance performance. And many of the performers are actually, they fled China, fled communism because they were persecuted for their beliefs. And so they're being barred from performing in South Korea right now because the CCP's foreign ministry called up South Korea, by the way, a democratic ally of the United States, to pressure them to stop the performance in South Korea. So China has so much leverage over every other country. That's my number one concern right now, is we still, so many years has passed, right? 3 years of COVID. There's still government officials who are unwilling to give up or unwilling to stand up to the CCP's pressure. A simple phone call from China is able to change something like that. That's absolutely mind-boggling to me. We see it in San Francisco right now, where just in anticipation of the Xi arrival, Gavin Newsom was able to clean up the streets, which he probably could have done months ago. I'd love to visit San Francisco now. I'd feel safe, right? There's no trash on the street. There's no homeless camps. I don't know, honestly. I feel bad for the homeless people because I don't know where they send them to. In China, they did that in 2017, right? They drove away a bunch of people, and there was no mercy. So I assumed they copied what China did in San Francisco this time. But yeah, that's what I fear, is a huge pressure which many countries around the world and their government are still succumbing to China's requests and so on. All right, let's continue on here. So we talked about the economy, we talked about Taiwan. I believe there's another one where we have talked about. We talked about the military cooperation. Oh yeah, so this last part here, which is talking about the fentanyl stuff, right? Restoring high-level communications between the military. Something interesting, you might still remember that China doesn't have a defense minister yet. Isn't that interesting? So who the heck is Lloyd Austin supposed to talk to in China about military stuff? Also, here may be a good time to talk about why the United States is asking for this military-to-military channel again. So a few days before this, right, we were still seeing footage of fighter jets from China in the South China Sea being aggressive towards Canada, towards the American, I believe, planes, and sometimes even the ships that are in the South China Sea transiting through. And the reason why the Biden administration wants this high-level communications channel in the military is to keep China on the record about their moves, right? So everyone is clear, because when you have the channel, it's like if China does something, they have to inform the US. If the US does something, they inform China. Obviously, we play by the rules. We're going to inform the other side, but China's not going to do that. So this gives Biden a leverage over China in coming with the military side, because now you have an excuse to provide things, potentially a sanction or some sort of a type of pressure because China didn't follow through with their promise. I still have I'm very skeptical, but I think this is the plan, right? It's to hold China accountable for a potential military issue, right? Because China promised they're not going to invade Taiwan. Will the Biden administration hold them accountable to that? Let's see. But that's the idea, is to restore the communications. And apparently it's so important that they're willing to concede some sort of an economic pressure to relief from China for that. So obviously, I think the urgency over Taiwan is there. So I definitely think that that's why. But that's pretty much it on the China side. I haven't seen if the White House has put out a statement yet. So we'll take a look at that real quick. Yeah, so they haven't put it out. There's the live, I think. Oh, he's finally talking. Let's hear some.
Let me be precise. We've discussed the need for them to be incredibly
AirPods
careful.
So I can hear him.
You have a circumstance where you know there is a fair number of Hamas terrorists. Hamas has already said publicly that they plan on attacking Israel again, like they did before, do everything cutting babies' heads off to burning women and children alive. And so the idea that they're going to just stop and not do anything is not realistic. This is not the carpet bombing. This is a different thing. They're going through these tunnels. They're going in the hospital. And if you notice, I was mildly preoccupied today. I apologize. I didn't see everything. But what I did see, whether I haven't had it confirmed yet, I am asked my team to answer the question. But what happened is they're also bringing in incubators. We're bringing in other other means to help the people in the hospital. And they've given the doctors and, I'm told, the doctors and nurses and the personnel an opportunity to get out of harm's way. So this is a different story than I believe what was occurring before with indiscriminate bombing. What do you got? Washington Post. I think.
Okay,
that's
I don't understand what he just answered to. I think something with Israel Hamas.
Oh, there you are. Sorry, I couldn't see in the light.
Oh, by the way, the important point is this time the China side didn't mention, if you look at it, they didn't mention anything about Ukraine or Israel at all, right? So that tells us the difference is huge between the two sides. And China's not going to admit that they're helping out Russia or Ukraine either. Iran.
Communicated to Prime Minister Netanyahu any sort of deadline or time frame for how long you are willing to support Israel?
Okay, I think they're just gonna talk mostly focusing on the Israel situation, which I think it's interesting because originally I thought that Biden's wanting to come to the negotiation table to get China on board. Which in that statement we just read from China seems to also be the case, right? China is putting out this willingness to cooperate on global issues, which includes the Russia war as well as in the Israel-Hamas situation. So interesting that China didn't mention anything, which in my view is to be expected, because China has always wanted to escape the responsibility from their role, but at the same time also play the mediator role. It's very confusing, it's complicated, it's contradicting. But that's how China, the Communist Party, really is. So nothing about that there. I'm still thinking that, oh yeah, here's something interesting I forgot to mention earlier. Let me put this up. This is in the real search result for, I believe, in WeChat about the keyword called ren, which in English means run. So like running away, right? The reason why this word became popular was because it's a people banned, or China banned the word for immigration, which is to, people were searching for immigration to the US and Canada, wherever. So they banned it because they think that people are leaving China. So people instead use run, which sounds like run, but in China is ren, as the replacement word for them trying to immigrate. And you see how here the the single day search reached, how many is that? Almost 1 million, or no, 100,000 in one day. This is today, by the way. This is like now. So that, according to the numbers, is an increase of 4,410.95%. So for some reason, China tries to make peace with the US. That leads to people wanting to run away to the United States. Maybe because they're opening up more planes and allowing people to travel, giving people more chances to run away from the repressive communist regime in China. That's something interesting. Let's see if we have any questions. But if we don't see any Biden stuff, we will probably conclude the stream. Let me remove this person. How do I ban him? There we go. Okay. So, we are probably going to conclude, and this gentleman here, Lau Morris, his summarization is pretty good. Basically, I think the US got what they wanted because the bottom line expectation is so low. They got, the whole anti-drug cooperation, which again needs to be seen, restoring high-level military cooperation, communication, defense cooperation, foreign affairs work meetings. So these were all about the communication side. Maritime military security consultation mechanisms, and theater-level leadership calls. So these were all things that were canceled by China last year. Climate cooperation, typical, increased flights next year, exchanges, etc. Bottom line, I think the meeting was as low expectation as we could have, so we're not disappointed. But we haven't seen the US side statement yet, so I'm remaining skeptical in terms of how it went on the United States side. Because China side will never tell you the real story. But it does highlight what their focuses are. So, well, that's it for today then. I hope you enjoy the stream. If you want to watch this type of regular kind of breakdowns live stream or about important events, make sure to leave a comment or let me know in the chat, and we can continue to do these. So hope you guys enjoy this tonight. And if you got any questions, leave them in the comments as well. Subscribe to our channel if you're new, and we'll see you next time. All right, bye-bye. Thanks for watching.